What if Pharaoh had feared God's power in time? Have you ever stopped to think about how a single decision can change everything? A choice that could save lives, your own child's and others, and even rewrite history? Today, we're diving into one of the tensest moments in the Bible, the plagues of Egypt. Now, imagine, what if Pharaoh, the one who stubbornly resisted to the very end, had repented before the 10th plague? What would Israel's story look like without the despair of losing their firstborns? And Egypt, could it have avoided complete collapse? Picture this: the most powerful man in Egypt, broken by a darkness that felt eternal, finally acknowledges the power of the God of Israel and decides to set the Hebrews free. Can you believe it? Before we begin, I have to warn you, this alternate story will shake you. So grab your coffee, settle in, and get ready for a journey full of twists, turns, and reflections. In Egypt, Pharaoh wasn't just a king, he was considered a living god. His word was law, and no one, absolutely no one, dared to defy him. Now, enter Moses and Aaron, two seemingly ordinary men, with a request that sounded like an affront. Let God's people go. Pharaoh's response: a resounding no. After all, who was this God that dared to command the great Pharaoh? And so began the conflict that would define the destiny of a nation. You know the plagues of Egypt well. Water turned to blood, invasions of frogs, lice and flies, diseased livestock, boils, hailstorms, locusts, and total darkness. Each plague struck at the heart of Egypt and, more importantly, at the gods they worshipped. The Nile, considered sacred, was turned to blood. The gods of weather, health, and fertility all seemed powerless before the God of Israel. With each plague, Pharaoh's heart grew harder. He refused Moses' request, even as his people's suffering increased. Imagine the scene: Egyptians, desperate, trying to deal with frogs everywhere, in their beds, food, and utensils, or the pain and fear spread by boils that appeared on the skin of everyone, from the poorest peasant to Pharaoh himself. But it was during the 9th plague that things became darker. Literally, a darkness so thick that it was impossible to see anything, not even one's own hand in front of their face. For 3 days, Egypt was paralyzed, as though it had fallen into a bottomless pit. And in that silence and darkness, one truth began to emerge: Pharaoh was not in control. This moment of darkness was a kind of prelude to what was to come. If Pharaoh continued to resist, the 10th plague would be unavoidable: the death of the firstborns. It was a threat that carried unbearable weight, a blow no parent, not even Pharaoh, wanted to face. Moses and Aaron once again stood before Pharaoh. With unwavering courage and faith, they repeated the same request: let God's people go. But Pharaoh, even in the face of chaos, held firm. He believed that giving in would be a sign of weakness, something unacceptable for someone in his position. Meanwhile, the Hebrew people waited. For generations, they had lived as slaves, building Egypt's cities with blood, sweat, and tears. They cried out for deliverance, and their voices echoed to the heavens. Time was running out, and the tension was palpable. What might have gone through Pharaoh's mind during those days of darkness? Did he begin to realize he was facing something far greater than himself? Perhaps a flicker of doubt crossed his mind. Perhaps for a brief moment, he considered the possibility of surrendering. In the original story, we know what happens. Pharaoh's heart remains hardened to the end, and the 10th plague occurs: the death of the firstborns. Egypt is devastated by grief, and Pharaoh himself loses his son, the heir to the throne. It's such a crushing blow that he finally relents, freeing the Hebrews. But what if things had been different? What if, during those days of complete darkness, Pharaoh had repented? Could Egypt have been spared this tragedy? Could the story have taken a completely different path? Let's reimagine the scene. The 9th plague is underway. Total darkness blankets Egypt like a thick shroud, paralyzing everything and everyone. Inside the palace, Pharaoh sits on his throne, but this time, something has changed. He is no longer so sure of himself. The plagues have struck one after another, and now, with the country submerged in darkness, he feels the weight of his resistance. Around him, his advisors are restless, whispering among themselves. Some suggest he yield to Moses and Aaron's demands. Others, more prideful, insist that he should not bow to a foreign god. But Pharaoh senses that something is different this time. He recalls Moses' words about the 10th plague, a warning that now feels more real than ever: the death of the firstborns. Moved by fear and the weight of the consequences, Pharaoh decides to act. He summons Moses and Aaron to the palace. The scene is tense. With a trembling voice, he declares, "You may go. Take your people, take everything that belongs to you and leave Egypt, but pray for me too." Moses is surprised but remains composed. He knows that the change in Pharaoh's heart didn't come by chance, but by the direct action of God. Moses accepts the terms and asks the Hebrews to prepare to leave immediately. The news spreads like wildfire through the Hebrew camp. Cries of joy and tears of relief echo through the night. After generations of slavery, the time for freedom has finally come. Families hurry to gather their belongings, but something unexpected happens. The Egyptians, instead of resisting, begin offering gifts to the Hebrews: jewels, gold, clothes, as if trying to atone for the years of suffering they caused. Meanwhile, Pharaoh orders the Egyptian temples to be emptied. He realizes that keeping the wealth acquired at the Hebrews' expense would be an affront to the God he now fears. In an unprecedented act, he decrees a day of fasting and repentance throughout Egypt. The pride of the man who once saw himself as a god begins to give way to something new: humility. The Hebrews' departure is unlike anything expected. There is no haste, no fear of pursuit. They leave in peace, marching with dignity. The cloud symbolizing God's presence guides them, while the Egyptians watch in silence, many still bewildered by the events. But the impact of this decision doesn't stop there. With Egypt spared from the 10th plague, the death of the firstborns doesn't happen. Egyptian families, who once saw Pharaoh as infallible, now begin to wonder about the God of Israel. Could this God, powerful enough to control nature, also be merciful enough to forgive? In the following months, Egypt begins to change. Pharaoh, transformed by the experience, decides to rewrite the kingdom's laws. He orders an end to slavery and begins implementing a more humane system of justice. He also allows Hebrew priests to remain in Egypt to teach about the one true God, a revolutionary concept in a land full of gods. On the other side, the Hebrew people journey toward the Promised Land. Their story will still have challenges, but now they carry a powerful testimony: Pharaoh's repentance and the hand of God that freed them without bloodshed. Imagine the impact this would have on future generations. Instead of a narrative marked by the tragedy of the 10th plague, Egyptian and Hebrew children hear stories of redemption, of how even the most prideful man can be transformed by divine grace. This alternate story shows us the power of repentance. One act of humility by Pharaoh not only spared Egypt from destruction, but paved the way for a new era of hope and transformation. Could this have been real? What lessons can we draw from this possibility? This alternate story is more than just a creative narrative. It's a mirror for our own lives. Think about it. How often do we find ourselves in Pharaoh's position? Trapped by pride, fear of change, or stubbornly clinging to control, even as everything around us begins to crumble. In this scenario, Pharaoh's repentance teaches us something profound. It's never too late to yield to God's voice. He had resisted through the first 9 plagues, despite seeing his people suffer and witnessing the impotence of Egypt's gods against the disasters. But when total darkness fell, he finally saw what truly mattered, and that made all the difference. Now, apply this to your life. How often do we ignore the signs God gives us, insisting on our own paths? Maybe it's a relationship you know isn't healthy, but you refuse to let go, or a habit that's already brought you negative consequences, yet you continue to feed it. Pharaoh's story reminds us that God gives us chances, but it also warns us that the consequences can be irreversible if we don't act in time. Imagine how things could have been different if, at the first sign from God, you had taken action. Perhaps that job you lost could have been saved if you had listened to a friend's advice, or maybe that friendship that fell apart could have been restored if you had been more humble. The opportunities we miss often stem from a hardened heart, and like Pharaoh, we need to learn how to break it. But it's not just about repentance. Pharaoh's repentance also illustrates the ripple effect of our choices. When he decided to set the Hebrews free, he didn't just save his own son, he changed the destiny of an entire nation. That decision became a turning point for both Egypt and Israel. So here's the question for you. Are your choices leading to freedom or to suffering? Consider how your decisions affect your family, friends, and community. Like Pharaoh, we sometimes become so focused on what we want that we fail to see how much our actions influence others. Another powerful takeaway from this story is the mercy of God. Even after Pharaoh had said no so many times, God was still willing to spare Egypt. Isn't that incredible? It's as if God was saying, I am just, but I am also full of grace. This applies to us as well. No matter how far you've gone or how many times you've failed, God is always ready to give you a new chance if you're willing to accept it. What's even more beautiful is that when Pharaoh acknowledged God's power, he began to change the structures around him. He abolished slavery, allowed religious freedom, and started transforming his people's culture. This shows us that a heart transformed by God has the power to transform the world. What about you? What needs to change in you for the world around you to change as well? Maybe it's time to forgive someone who hurt you. Or perhaps it's time to admit that you need help, that you can't continue alone. God can use a repentant heart to do things we can't even imagine. Pharaoh's story also teaches us about leadership. A true leader isn't someone who clings to power at all costs, but someone who puts the well-being of their people above themselves. In this narrative, Pharaoh's repentance didn't just save lives, it gave Egypt a new chance to rebuild. This is a powerful reminder for anyone in a position of influence, whether at home, work, or church. In the end, the lingering question is, what are we waiting for to change? Will we wait until everything is lost, like Pharaoh in the original story? Or will we learn from this alternative, recognizing that true power comes from God, not from ourselves? This story challenges us to think about the impact of pride, the strength of repentance, and the beauty of a transformed heart. And above all, it reminds us that God is always ready to act. We just need to be willing to say yes. Imagine the impact a single decision can have, not just on our lives, but on the lives of so many people around us. This alternate scenario makes us reflect on how repentance and obedience can change everything. Now tell me, what other biblical story do you think could take a different turn? Could Samson have defeated the Philistines if he hadn't revealed the secret of his strength? Or maybe, what if Peter hadn't denied Jesus? The possibilities are endless, and we want to hear your ideas. And here's an invitation. Share this story with your friends and family. It's an incredible way to spread the message that God is always ready to transform us, even when everything seems lost. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, what are you waiting for? We have so many amazing stories to explore together. Don't forget to turn on notifications, because in the next episode, we're diving into another breathtaking story. What will it be? Just a spoiler, it involves someone very brave facing a giant. But will they win? Leave your comments below with suggestions and let us know what you thought of this episode. Your feedback is so important for us to keep creating content that touches hearts and minds. We'll see you in the next What If? And until then, why not check out other videos on the channel? I bet you'll find more stories that will inspire you.